My wife filed for divorce. Thinking she'd get half, forgot I had a prenup. She signed to shut her parents up, her lawyer's face. When he read the terms, she got what she deserved. Nothing. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a wild ride from start to finish. My divorce was finalized last month, and I'm finally ready to share the whole mess. My ex-wife thought she was going to clean me out, take half my business, the house, everything. Turns out that prenup she signed 7 years ago wasn't just some piece of paper after all. Her lawyer's reaction when he actually read the damn thing? Priceless. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. I'm 34. Been running my own electrical contracting company here in Colorado since I was 26. Started from the bottom doing apprentice work right out of high school, while everyone else was partying at state universities. I chose the harder path up front. 4 years of apprenticeship making barely above minimum wage, studying code books at night, taking certification exams. By 22, I had my journeyman license. Spent the next 2 years working commercial projects, learning the business side from my boss who was getting ready to retire. By 24, I had my master electrician certification, which meant I could pull permits and run my own jobs. When my boss retired at 64, I bought the business. We worked out a payment plan. I put down what I'd saved, financed the rest, and took over the client list, contracts, and equipment. 26 years old and suddenly responsible for everything. The first year I barely slept, but I made it work. The company does commercial and industrial work, rewiring old buildings, installing new electrical systems, emergency repairs, panel upgrades, lighting retrofits. I've got 4 full-time electricians working for me and we stay busy year-round. The money's good. Solid 6 figures when things are running smooth. I also own the building where my office and workshop are located. Bought it in 2016 when the previous owner was desperate to sell. Old automotive garage from the 1970s, solid construction, got it for $180,000 when it was worth more. Spent 6 months converting it into a proper electrical shop, did most of the work myself on weekends. The location's perfect, right off the highway with good visibility. I rent out half to an HVAC company, which covers most of my mortgage payment. Current appraisal puts it around $650,000. The mortgage is paid down about halfway. My personal life was simple before Brittany. I had my house, a 3-bedroom ranch I bought as a foreclosure in 2014 for $150,000. Place was trashed when I got it. Spent 2 years fixing it up. Rewired everything, gutted the kitchen, refinished the hardwood floors, replaced windows, new roof, new HVAC. By 2016, I'd turned that $150,000 disaster into something worth close to $400,000. The mortgage payment was only $800 a month, way cheaper than renting. I drove a Ford F-250 I needed for work. Bought it used in 2015. Diesel engine, crew cab, perfect for hauling tools. Kept it maintained religiously. Now has 180,000 miles and still runs like new. Weekends I spent working on the house, doing side jobs, or up in the mountains. I had buddies from my apprentice days but mostly kept to myself. I valued peace and quiet after dealing with people all week. Met Brittany in spring of 2016 at my buddy Kevin's wedding. She was a bridesmaid, I was a groomsman. You know how that story goes. She worked as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown, seemed sweet enough, laughed at my jokes even when they weren't that funny. She was 24 at the time. I was 27. We started talking at the reception and I got her number. The first few dates were normal. Coffee, dinner at a nice Italian place, a movie. She seemed impressed that I owned my own business and my own house. Said most guys her age were still living with roommates or in their parents' basements. I appreciated that she noticed I had my act together, but honestly, it wasn't that impressive. I'd just been working my tail off while everyone else was figuring out their liberal arts degrees. Things moved pretty fast. By summer, we were seeing each other multiple times a week. By fall, she'd basically moved into my place, even though she kept her apartment just in case. I noticed she never offered to help with groceries or utilities, but whatever. I made more money than her, so I figured it balanced out. Her parents were a whole different story. Her dad, Richard, owned a chain of car dealerships across 3 counties. We're talking serious money, like multiple vacation homes and country club membership money. Her mom, Patricia, was one of those women who never worked a day in their life, but acted like chairing the hospital fundraiser committee was equivalent to running a Fortune 500 company. They lived in this ridiculous McMansion up in the hills with a circular driveway and a fountain. First time I met them was Thanksgiving 2016. I showed up in my truck wearing a button-down and khakis, which apparently wasn't formal enough. Patricia literally looked at my truck in the driveway like I'd parked a garbage truck there. Richard gave me this handshake that was trying way too hard to prove something. The whole dinner they asked these questions that sounded polite, but were really just ways to figure out my net worth. So, you're an electrician? That's blue-collar work, right? Do you see yourself staying in that field long-term? Brittany mentioned you own a house. Is it in a good neighborhood? I answered everything straight and didn't let them rattle me. Yeah, I work with my hands. Yeah, I plan to keep growing my business. Yeah, my neighborhood's solid even if it's not gated with security guards. Brittany seemed embarrassed by their questions, but didn't exactly jump to defend me either. Despite the parents, Brittany and I got engaged in February 2017. I proposed on a hiking trip. Nothing fancy, just the two of us at sunrise overlooking this valley we'd hiked to. She cried and said yes, and for about 10 minutes I thought I'd actually found someone who got me. Then the wedding planning started, and her parents went into full control mode. Patricia had opinions on literally everything. The venue, the flowers, the menu, the music, who was invited, what I was wearing. Richard kept making comments about how small my side of the guest list was compared to theirs. They offered to pay for the whole wedding, but it came with so many strings attached that it might as well have been a puppet show. The biggest fight came about 2 months before the wedding. We were at dinner with her parents at their country club, which they insisted on because it's important to be seen in the right places. Richard ordered for everyone without asking. Some kind of power move, I guess. Then he drops this bomb. So we've been talking to our attorney and we really think you two should have a prenuptial agreement, just to protect everyone's interests. Brittany's face went white. Dad, we already talked about this. I know what we talked about, Richard cut her off. But Patricia and I have significant assets that we plan to pass down to Brittany eventually. We need to make sure those assets stay in the family. I just sat there eating my steak, letting him talk. I knew where this was going. Patricia jumped in with her fake sweet voice. It's really just a formality, nothing personal. We just want to make sure that if something unfortunate were to happen, both parties are protected. What they really meant was they wanted to make sure the blue-collar electrician couldn't get his dirty hands on their precious family money. Fine by me. I never wanted their money anyway. But here's where it gets interesting. I'd actually been thinking about a prenup myself. My business was worth a decent amount, and growing. The building was appreciating. The house was getting fixed up. I'd worked my whole adult life to build what I had, and I wasn't about to hand half of it over to someone if things went south. But I hadn't brought it up because I didn't want to seem like I didn't trust Brittany. So when Richard suggested it, I just nodded. Actually, I think that's a smart idea. I've got my business and some assets too. Probably makes sense to keep things separate. The look on Richard's face was something else. He clearly expected me to argue or get offended. Patricia actually looked disappointed that she didn't get to have a dramatic scene about it. Brittany just stared at me. You want a prenup? Makes sense, I said. I've got the business, the building, the house. You've got your family's assets coming eventually. We keep what's ours, build what's ours together, and if we split up, nobody fights about it. Seems fair? Richard recovered quick. Well, yes, exactly. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I'll have our family attorney draft something up. I'll have my attorney review it, I said. And we should probably each get our own representation so everything's above board. I could see Richard didn't love that I wasn't just going to sign whatever his lawyer put in front of me, but he couldn't really argue with it without showing his hand. So that's how we ended up with the prenup. His attorney drafted this thing that was basically designed to make sure Brittany's potential inheritance stayed untouchable. It was like 12 pages of legal language about separate property and future gifts and all this stuff that basically meant her parents' money would never touch me. Fine by me. I never wanted their money anyway. The whole thing felt insulting, but I bit my tongue. My attorney looked it over and immediately started laughing. They want you to sign this, but they haven't protected you at all. This is completely one-sided. So we added a bunch of clauses protecting my business, the commercial building, my house, and any retirement accounts or investments I had before the marriage. Then we got creative. My attorney suggested adding language about separate funds to cover any future acquisitions I made with business income. Here's the thing, Robert explained. You're young. Your business is growing. You're going to acquire more assets. We want to make sure anything you buy with business income stays yours, not marital property. We spent 3 weeks going back and forth with Richard's attorney. They wanted my business increase in value during the marriage to be marital property. Basically, they wanted half of my hard work if we divorced. I said absolutely not. My attorney pushed back hard on that. Your client wants to protect family assets, Robert told their attorney. My client wants the same protection. Either we both get it or neither of us does. Richard tried to play hardball. Said maybe they'd reconsider the whole wedding if I wasn't willing to be reasonable. I told Brittany to tell her dad that was fine with me, We could skip the expensive wedding and go to the courthouse. She panicked, and suddenly her parents were willing to compromise. The final version protected everything I had before the marriage, plus anything I acquired with business funds during the marriage. We also added a clause that anything acquired during the marriage with separate funds, meaning my business income, would remain separate property. This was the key clause that would save me later. My attorney defined separate funds as any money from my business, since I owned it before the marriage. That meant even money I earned during the marriage was technically separate if it came from the company. We also specified that any appreciation in value of separate property would remain separate. So if my house doubled in value during the marriage, that increase was still mine because the house was purchased with my separate funds before we got married. The language got technical. Things like any real property, personal property, business interests, or financial accounts acquired by either party with separate funds, as defined in Section 2. One shall remain the separate property of that party, including but not limited to any appreciation in value, rents, profits, or other returns on said property. My attorney was hesitant about that language being too broad, but I insisted. I'm betting on myself here, I told him. My business is going to grow. I'm going to buy more property. I'm going to build wealth. I want to make sure that if this marriage doesn't work out, I keep what I earn. Looking back, that was probably the smartest decision I made besides buying the commercial building. Brittany barely read the thing. We were in the lawyer's office on a Thursday afternoon, and she was literally on her phone, texting her bridesmaids about flowers or some wedding detail while the attorneys explained it to her. Her attorney, who Richard hired, which was sketchy as hell, kept trying to get her to pay attention. Miss Peterson, this is a legally binding contract that will govern the division of property if you divorce. You really should review these terms carefully. This protects his business assets and any property he acquires during the marriage with business funds. I don't care, Brittany interrupted, not even looking up from her phone. I'm not marrying him for his money. I have my own family money. This whole prenup thing is just to shut my parents up about keeping their precious inheritance safe. Can we please just sign it and be done? I have a dress fitting in 40 minutes. Her attorney looked at me like he was apologizing. Miss Peterson, I really must insist you read at least the summary section. How much is my dad paying you to be here? Brittany snapped. Because you're supposed to be making this easy, not giving me homework. Where do I sign? The attorney sighed and pointed to the signature lines. We both signed. Got it notarized by the secretary in the office. Filed it properly with our marriage license application the next day. The whole 9 yards. Completely legal, completely enforceable, completely ignored by Brittany, who thought the whole thing was a waste of time. And then we never talked about it again. The wedding itself was this over-the-top production at a vineyard with 250 people I mostly didn't know. Her parents paid for it and made sure everyone knew it. Richard's toast was literally about how we spared no expense to give our daughter the wedding she deserves. No mention of me or us building a life together, just flex after flex about their money. The first couple years of marriage were okay. Not great, but okay. Brittany kept working at the dental office, but started taking more time off for random stuff. Shopping trips, spa days with her mom, long weekends at her parents' vacation house. She'd invite me sometimes, but I had a business to run and couldn't just disappear whenever. Money started getting weird around year 2. She'd always been kind of spendy, but it ramped up hard. New clothes every week from boutiques I'd never heard of. $300 haircuts every 6 weeks at some salon her mom went to. Getting her nails done every 2 weeks standing appointment style. Another $100 each time. She joined this fancy gym that cost like $200 a month, even though she went maybe twice a week. Upgraded her car to a brand new Lexus RX 350. 50,000 vehicle fully loaded, financed for 6 years because she deserved something nice. The payment was like $850 a month. I didn't say much at first because she had her own income from the dental office, about $45,000 a year, and I figured she could spend it however she wanted. Except her income was only covering maybe half her expenses. The rest was coming from our joint account that I was funding. I started noticing groceries on the credit card, gas on the credit card, her car payment coming out of our joint checking. She was basically living beyond her means and using my income to cover the gap. But then she started making comments about my spending. I'd buy a new set of power tools for the shop, commercial grade stuff that costs money but lasts forever and pays for itself on the first job. And she'd roll her eyes, say something like, "More tools? How many do you need?" I upgraded one of the work trucks that had 250,000 miles and was becoming unreliable, got a good deal on a 3-year-old Ford with low miles, and she asked why I wasted money on that piece of junk instead of buying new. The real blow-up came when I paid down an extra $5,000 on the commercial building mortgage. I'd had a good month, landed a big contract, and decided to throw the extra at principal to save on interest. When she saw the bank transfer, she actually got mad. Started yelling about how we could have gone to Hawaii with that money. We could be sitting on a beach right now drinking Mai Tais, but instead you're throwing money at some building nobody cares about, she said one night. That building generates $2,500 a month in rental income, I pointed out. It's an investment. Every dollar I pay down now saves us $3 in interest over the life of the loan. Everything's an investment with you. Everything's about the future, the business, the property. You're always working or talking about work or thinking about work. When do we get to just enjoy life? When do I get to enjoy life? You can enjoy life with the money you earn, I said, which probably wasn't the smartest response. She didn't talk to me for 3 days after that. I started noticing she was spending more and more time at her parents' place. Long Sunday brunches that turned into dinner, weeknight visits because mom needs help planning the hospital fundraiser, or dad wants my opinion on something. I'd come home from work at 6 and she'd already be gone. Wouldn't get back until 10 or 11 at night. When I asked about it, she'd say I was being controlling, that she was allowed to have a relationship with her parents, which was true, but it felt like she was married to them more than she was married to me. Year 3 is when things really shifted. She quit her job at the dental office, just came home one day and announced she was done, said it was too stressful and the pay wasn't worth it. I asked what she was planning to do instead, and she said she was figuring things out. For 6 months, she didn't work at all. Just spent her days shopping, having lunch with friends, going to her parents' house. I was paying for everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, her car payment, insurance, gas, you name it. Her contribution was exactly zero. I brought it up a few times and she'd get defensive. I'm taking care of the house, she'd say, even though we both knew that meant she ran the dishwasher sometimes. You're always saying we should spend more time together. Well, now I'm available, she'd argue when I pointed out the money situation. But she wasn't available. She was always busy with something else. Girls' trips, her mom's fundraiser, her friend's baby shower, anything but actually spending time with me. Finally, she got a part-time job at a boutique her friend owned, 20 hours a week at like $15 an hour. Barely enough to cover her own gas and phone bill. But at least it was something. Year 4, 5, and 6 all kind of blurred together. We were roommates more than spouses. She did her thing, I did mine. We'd have dinner together maybe twice a week, watch TV in separate rooms, barely talked beyond logistics about whose family we had to see for which holiday. The physical side of things had basically stopped. We went from a few times a week to a few times a month to basically never. I brought it up once and she said she was tired or stressed or just not in the mood. After a while, I stopped bothering. I threw myself into work, grew the business from 4 employees to 8, added a second location in a neighboring town, started doing bigger commercial contracts, bought 2 more investment properties, a duplex and a small office building. All of it paid for with business income, all of it carefully documented as separate property under the prenup terms. Brittany didn't seem to notice or care about any of it. She'd ask how work was and I'd give her a 2-sentence answer, and that was that. She had no idea what contracts we were working on, how much the business was worth, what the properties were generating in rent. She never asked, and I never volunteered the information. Year 7 is when she finally made her move. It was late January, freezing cold outside, and I'd just finished a big municipal contract that was going to set us up nice for the year. I came home around 7, tired as hell, ready to shower and crash. Brittany was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and a bunch of papers spread out. She had this weird energy, like she was nervous but excited at the same time. "We need to talk," she said. Here we go, I thought. Every marriage-ending conversation starts with those 4 words. "Okay," I said, grabbing water from the fridge. "I'm not happy," she said. "I haven't been happy for a long time. This marriage isn't working." I sat down across from her, not even surprised. "Yeah, I've noticed. I think we should get divorced." I just nodded. "All right." She looked thrown off by my calm reaction, like she expected me to beg or argue or break down crying. "That's it? Just all right? Brittany, we've barely been married for the last 3 years. We don't talk. We don't spend time together. We're basically strangers living in the same house. You want a divorce? Fine. Let's do it." She recovered and got this little smirk on her face. "Well, I've actually already talked to a lawyer, just to understand my options." "Smart," I said. And he explained that even though we have that prenup thing, I'm still entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. So half the increase in the house value, half your retirement contributions, half the business growth. "The prenup protects the business," I interrupted. "Only the value from before we got married," she said, looking at her laptop like she had notes. Any increase in value during the marriage is marital property. Same with the house. Plus, I'm entitled to spousal support since I earn less than you, and I've been a homemaker for part of our marriage. I almost laughed at homemaker, but I kept my face neutral. You've talked to a lawyer about all this already? Obviously, I'm not stupid. I know my rights. Good for you, I said. I'll get my attorney to draw up the paperwork then. She looked confused again. Wait, don't you want to talk about this? Try counseling or something? You just said you're not happy and you want a divorce. You've already talked to a lawyer about taking half my stuff. What exactly would counseling accomplish? I just thought I don't know, try harder, I guess. Try harder at a marriage you've already ended in your head? Pass. If you want out, let's make it clean and fast. She sat there for a minute, probably realizing she wasn't going to get whatever dramatic scene she'd imagined. Finally, she stood up. Fine. My lawyer said he'd send you the divorce petition within the next week. You'll be served at work, probably. Cool, I said. I'll watch for it. She grabbed her laptop and papers and went upstairs. I heard her making phone calls, probably to her mom or her friends, telling them about the big confrontation and how I didn't even fight for us. Whatever. I had work to do. The next morning, I called my attorney, guy named Robert, who'd helped me buy the commercial properties and who'd reviewed the prenup 7 years ago. Told him what was going down. Do you still have a copy of the prenup? He asked. Yeah, in my safe. Good. Get it to me ASAP. I want to review the exact language before her attorney comes at us. I drove it to his office that afternoon. Robert read through it while I sat there, watching his expression go from interested to amused. Did she actually read this before signing? He asked. Not really. She was on her phone the whole time. Said she was just signing it to shut her parents up. Robert laughed. Well, she's about to get a very expensive lesson in reading contracts. This thing is airtight. Your business, the commercial building, the house, all protected as separate property. And this clause about business income remaining separate, that's going to save you a fortune. So she's not getting half? She's not getting anything. Well, she's entitled to whatever she brought into the marriage and whatever she bought with her own money. But your assets? Protected. The retirement accounts you had before marriage? Protected. Any increase in value of separate property? Protected. Even money you earned during the marriage, since it came from the business. What about spousal support? Maybe a little for a short period since she makes less, but nothing major. Colorado isn't California. We don't just hand over lifetime support. And given that she voluntarily quit her full-time job and spent most of the marriage living off your income while contributing nothing? Yeah, the judge isn't going to be sympathetic to her needing support. We can fight it. I felt this weight lift off my shoulders. 7 years ago, when I insisted on that business income language, I was just being cautious. Now it was going to save me. Brittany moved out 2 days later, went to her parents' house, took her clothes and personal stuff, left everything else. Fine by me. Less drama. True to her word, I got served at work the following week. Her petition laid out her demands. Half the house value increase, half the business value increase, half my retirement accounts, spousal support of $3,000 a month for 5 years, and she wanted to keep the Lexus which I'd been making payments on. Robert filed our response 2 weeks later. It was basically no to everything based on the prenup terms. He also included a counterclaim asking her to pay her share of the community debts, which included that Lexus she wanted to keep. Her attorney requested mediation. We met at a conference room downtown in March. Brittany showed up in a new outfit looking like she was going to a job interview. Her mom came with her for some reason. I showed up in jeans and a work shirt because I had to head to a job site after. Her attorney was this guy in an expensive suit who clearly thought he was hot stuff. Started the meeting by laying out their position. Brittany deserved half of everything because she'd supported me during our marriage and sacrificed her career. Robert just slid the prenup across the table. Read page 3, section 4. I watched the attorney's face as he read it. Watched it go from confident to confused to concerned. He flipped to page 5, read more, then page 7. His whole demeanor changed. Can we have a moment with our client? He asked. They stepped out. Brittany looked pissed. Patricia looked confused. I just sat there drinking terrible conference room coffee. When they came back, the attorney's whole tone was different. My client is willing to negotiate on the spousal support amount. No spousal support, Robert cut him off. She quit her job voluntarily, spent the marriage living off my client's income while contributing nothing to the household, and she makes enough at her current part-time job to support herself. She wants to maintain the lifestyle she had during the marriage? She can get a full-time job. That's ridiculous, Patricia jumped in. She gave up her career. She quit a dental hygienist job paying $45,000 a year, Robert said flatly. That's not a career sacrifice, and she did it of her own choice, not to support my client's business or relocate for his job. She just didn't feel like working anymore. The attorney tried to pivot. What about the house? She's entitled to half the appreciation. The house was purchased before the marriage with my client's separate funds, Robert said. All improvements were made with his separate funds from the business. The prenup clearly states that property purchased with separate funds remains separate property, including any appreciation in value. The business value, protected under the prenup, all of it. The value before marriage and any increase during marriage. It's spelled out in black and white on page 4. I was just sitting there watching this guy realize his client's case was falling apart. Brittany looked like she was going to cry. Patricia looked furious. So what exactly is your client offering? The attorney asked, his voice tight. Brittany gets to keep her personal belongings, her jewelry, her clothes, anything she purchased with her own income. She can keep the Lexus if she assumes the full loan balance. My client keeps everything else. No spousal support. We split the cost of the divorce filing fees. That's it. This is outrageous, Patricia said. She was married to him for 7 years and signed a prenuptial agreement that she never bothered to read, Robert said. An agreement that her father insisted on, I might add. Funny how these things work out. The mediation ended with no agreement. Her attorney said they'd see us in court. Fine by me. I had a business to run. Over the next few months, discovery happened. Her attorney requested financial documents, which we provided, all of it proving that every asset was separate property under the prenup. My business accounts showing the revenue and how it was separate from any marital funds. The commercial building records showing I'd purchased it before the marriage and made all mortgage payments from the business account. The house documentation showing I'd bought it in 2014, 2 years before we even met, and all the improvements were paid for with business income. The retirement accounts showing the balance from before the marriage, separately tracked from any contributions during. Robert was methodical about it. Every document was organized, labeled, cross-referenced with the prenup language. He put together this binder that was probably 3 inches thick, tab after tab of evidence that everything I owned was separate property. Her attorney's going to try to argue that some of this became marital property through commingling, Robert explained. But we've got clear records showing the source of every dollar. The business account, the rental income, your personal accounts from before marriage, all of it separate and traceable. Her attorney kept trying to find some angle, some way to argue the prenup was invalid or unfair. They filed a motion claiming Brittany didn't have independent legal counsel. Except she did, even though her dad paid for it. That attorney filed an affidavit saying he'd explained the terms to her. She'd been given opportunity to review it. She'd chosen not to and signed anyway. They tried arguing she was coerced, except the signing was witnessed and notarized, and it happened 2 months before the wedding. Plenty of time for her to back out if she had cold feet. They tried arguing the terms were unconscionable, except she'd specifically agreed to protect her family's assets the same way I'd protected mine. How could it be unconscionable when both parties got the same protection? They even brought in some financial expert to testify about the value of her contributions to the marriage, basically arguing that her being present and maintaining the household was worth money. Robert tore that apart in about 10 minutes of questioning. What household duties did your client perform? He asked their expert. The expert had to admit Brittany didn't cook much, didn't clean, didn't do laundry, didn't maintain the yard, didn't handle any home repairs. We'd hired a cleaning service once a month because she wouldn't do it. I handled all the yard work myself. All the home maintenance was me. So what exactly did she contribute to the household? Robert asked. The expert couldn't come up with a good answer. She provided emotional support and companionship. Is there a market rate for emotional support and companionship? Robert asked. Because that sounds like a marriage, which is what this was. My client isn't required to pay her for being married to him. Their case was falling apart, and everyone in that courtroom could see it. Robert told me their attorney kept trying to negotiate, looking for any settlement that would give Brittany something. They offered to drop the spousal support claim if I'd give her 20 grand. Robert said no. They offered to walk away if I'd give her the Lexus free and clear. Robert said she could keep it, but she was taking the loan with it. They're desperate, Robert explained. They took this case thinking it was a slam-dunk payday, and now they're realizing they're going to lose badly. Her attorney's probably worried about looking incompetent in front of a client whose father has money and connections. Meanwhile, I was just living my life. It was just working, running the business, hanging out with friends. I actually felt better than I had in years. Like a weight was off my shoulders. I was sleeping better, had more energy, was more focused at work. Turns out being married to someone who resented you and saw you as an ATM was way more stressful than being alone. I heard through mutual friends that Brittany was losing her mind. Apparently, she'd fully assumed she was going to take me to the cleaners, walk away with hundreds of thousands in property division, and live comfortable off spousal support while she found herself or whatever. She'd been telling her friends she was going to get the house, half the business, retirement money, the whole 9 yards. One of her bridesmaids, who'd become friends with my buddy Kevin's wife, told us that Brittany had already been looking at apartments in the nice part of town, planning what furniture she was going to buy, talking about taking a year off to travel through Europe on her settlement. Now she was facing reality that she was going to walk away with basically nothing except her clothes and a car loan. Her parents had apparently hired a second attorney to review the prenup, hoping to find something the first guy missed. That attorney told them the same thing. It was valid, enforceable, and comprehensive. Brittany was screwed. Patricia called me in June. I almost didn't answer but decided to let her have her say. "You need to be reasonable about this," she started. No hello or anything. "Brittany sacrificed 7 years of her life for you." "Brittany sacrificed nothing," I said. "She quit her job because she didn't feel like working. She spent 7 years spending my money while contributing nothing to our household or our future. She decided she wanted a divorce because she thought she'd get a big payday. Well, she thought wrong. You can't just leave her with nothing. The prenup that your husband insisted on says I can. If you have a problem with it, take it up with Richard. He's the one who wanted to protect the family assets. Well, I protected mine too. This is heartless. This is business. Brittany treated our marriage like a paycheck. Now the paycheck's gone. She's got a job. She can support herself. Same as everyone else." She sputtered something about me being cruel and bitter, but I was done. "If you've got legal concerns, talk to your attorney. I'm done discussing this." I hung up, blocked her number, blocked Richard's too. The court date finally came in August. I took the morning off work, showed up in slacks and a button-down. Brittany was there with both her parents, her attorney, looking like she was going to a funeral. The judge reviewed the prenup, reviewed the financial documents, listened to her attorney's arguments about fairness and her contributions to the marriage. Then the judge looked at Brittany. "Did you read this prenuptial agreement before signing it?" I skimmed it," Brittany said quietly. "Did your attorney explain the terms to you?" "Yes, but I didn't think—" "You didn't think it would matter?" the judge said. "You signed a legal document protecting your spouse's separate property, and now you're surprised that it's being enforced?" Her attorney jumped in. "Your Honor, my client was young and didn't fully understand." "Your client was 24 years old, a college graduate, and had independent legal representation," the judge said. "She made a choice. Now she has to live with it." The judge ruled in my favor on everything. No spousal support. I kept the house, the business, the commercial properties, the retirement accounts, all of it. She kept her personal property and the Lexus with its loan. The marriage was dissolved. I watched Brittany cry on her mom's shoulder in the hallway afterward. Patricia was glaring at me like I'd personally ruined her life. Richard looked embarrassed, probably realizing his brilliant prenup idea had backfired spectacularly. I just walked out, got in my truck, and went back to work. Had a commercial install to finish before the end of the week. The divorce was finalized in September. 7 years of marriage, done. And I walked away with exactly what I'd walked in with. My business, my property, my future intact. Word got around our social circle pretty quick. Most people were shocked Brittany got nothing. Some people thought I was harsh. But the people who mattered, my actual friends who'd seen how she treated me in the marriage, they got it. Kevin, whose wedding we'd met at, called me up. "Dude, I heard about the divorce. You all right?" "Better than I've been in years," I told him honestly. "Brittany's telling people you screwed her over, left her broke, all this stuff. Brittany can tell people whatever she wants. The legal documents tell the real story. For what it's worth, man, I always thought she was using you. She talked about your money more than she talked about you. That tracked with everything I'd noticed but ignored during the marriage. Last I heard through the friend network, Brittany had to move back in with her parents. The boutique job didn't work out, and she's struggling to find something that pays enough to afford her own place. She's apparently still bitter about the divorce, tells anyone who'll listen that I stole 7 years of her life and left her with nothing." Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.